The year 1968 changed music forever. Before social media, before auto-tune, artists created pure magic. Let's explore what made these songs revolutionary. Hey Jude by the Beatles remains one of the most enduring compositions in popular music history. The Beatles formed in Liverpool in 1960, originally performing as the Quarrymen, before evolving through several name changes. By 1967, they were already musical royalty, but behind the scenes, tensions were brewing. Many fans don't realize that Hey Jude emerged during a period when the band was experiencing significant internal conflict. Paul McCartney wrote the song for Julian Lennon, John's son, during John's divorce from Cynthia Lennon. What's particularly interesting is that John Lennon initially thought the song was about him, a subliminal message from Paul endorsing his relationship with Yoko Ono, which was already causing friction within the band. After the Beatles disbanded in 1970, each member pursued solo careers with varying degrees of success. Paul McCartney, the song's composer, continued to perform Hey Jude regularly throughout his career, making it a staple of his live shows for over 5 decades.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
The song's universal message of taking a sad situation and making it better resonated beyond the specific circumstances of its creation. The surviving Beatles never reunited as a complete group, though various partial collaborations occurred over the years. What's particularly striking about Hey Jude is how it captured the band at their creative peak, just before the relationships deteriorated beyond repair. The song represents both the height of their collaborative powers and foreshadows the end of the most influential band in rock history. A fascinating fact about Hey Jude is that its iconic fade-out, with the repeated na-na-na-na chorus, lasts for over 4 minutes, nearly half the song's total runtime. This was unprecedented in popular music at the time, when radio stations preferred shorter songs. But the Beatles insisted on releasing the full 7-minute, 11-second version as a single, despite industry pushback. During the recording, the band was joined by a 36-piece orchestra whose members were paid double their usual fee to clap and sing along during the fade-out, except for one classical musician who refused, saying his musical dignity wouldn't allow him to participate in such frivolity. Love Is Blue by Paul Mauriat might be one of the most unexpected #1 hits of the era. Mauriat, a French orchestra leader born in 1925, had been working as an arranger and conductor since the 1950s before achieving this breakthrough in America. What makes Love Is Blue remarkable is that it was the first instrumental track to hit #1 on the U.S. charts since 1961. The song was originally composed by André Pop with lyrics by Pierre Coeur as L'amour est bleu, and was Luxembourg's entry in the 1967 Eurovision Song Contest, where it placed 4th. Mauriat's orchestral version transformed the composition into something grand and cinematic, but his success in America was viewed with suspicion by many rock purists who saw his orchestral arrangement as too commercial and lacking authenticity. Despite his massive hit, Paul Mauriat never became a household name in America like contemporaries such as Herb Alpert. He continued conducting his grand orchestra until his retirement in 1998, releasing over 30 albums and selling millions of records worldwide, particularly in Japan, where he maintained a devoted following. Mauriat passed away in 2006 at the age of 81, leaving behind a substantial musical legacy that extended far beyond Love Is Blue. What's often overlooked is how Mauriat's success highlighted the divide between popular taste and critical opinion. While rock critics dismissed his lush orchestral sound, millions of listeners embraced it, suggesting the gap between what critics valued and what audiences enjoyed was growing wider during this pivotal period in musical history. The recording of Love Is Blue involved over 50 musicians and took place in Paris, using revolutionary recording techniques for the time. While the song sounds effortless, Mauriat actually recorded multiple versions before settling on the final arrangement. The song's distinctive sound comes partly from the use of a harpsichord alongside the orchestra, creating a blend of Baroque and contemporary elements. This combination was Mauriat's deliberate attempt to bridge classical and pop sensibilities something he had been perfecting for years before his international breakthrough. If you were there when these songs first hit the airwaves, I want to hear your story. What memories do these tracks bring back? Drop your experiences in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and share this video with friends who'll appreciate this musical journey. Your stories matter to this community. Honey by Bobby Goldsboro tells a heartbreaking story that continues to divide listeners. Goldsboro began his career in 1962 as a guitarist for Roy Orbison before embarking on a solo career in 1964. He had moderate success with earlier singles, but nothing prepared him for the overwhelming response to Honey in 1968. The song, written by Bobby Russell, depicts the death of a young wife and her husband's grief-stricken memories. What's controversial about this track is how it's perceived. For many, it's a moving tribute to lost love, while others consider it emotionally manipulative and overly sentimental. Music critics have frequently included it on worst songs list despite its commercial success, creating a stark contrast between critical reception and popular appeal.
And honey, I miss you.
After Honey, Goldsboro continued releasing music throughout the 1970s, including the hit Watching Scotty Grow. By the 1980s, he shifted focus to television, creating the children's program The Swamp Critters of Lost Lagoon. Today, Goldsboro has largely retreated from public life, but maintains a dedicated fan base who appreciate his distinctive voice and emotional delivery. His legacy remains complicated, dismissed by many critics, yet treasured by fans who connect deeply with the emotion in his performance. The divide over Honey reflects broader cultural tensions about masculinity and emotional expression in the late 1960s.
One day while I was not at home, while she was there and all alone.
When men were increasingly being encouraged to express vulnerability, while traditional gender roles remained firmly entrenched. Despite being widely parodied for its sentimentality, Honey has some unexpected connections to country music royalty. The songwriter, Bobby Russell, was briefly married to Vicki Lawrence of the Carol Burnett Show fame, and he initially didn't think much of Honey, considering it too saccharine. Russell tried to prevent the song's release as a single, believing it was not commercially viable. He was proven spectacularly wrong when it became the biggest-selling record of 1968. The song's unusual structure, which jumps between past and present tense as the narrator recalls his deceased wife, was innovative for pop music storytelling at the time, despite the criticism it later received. Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay by Otis represents one of music's most bittersweet success stories. Redding began his career in the late 1950s, performing in talent shows before joining Johnny Jenkins' band, the Pine Toppers. His breakthrough came when he recorded These Arms of Mine during unused studio time following a Jenkins session. By 1967, Redding was expanding beyond his soul roots, experimenting with new sounds and approaches. What many don't realize is that Dock of the Bay marked a deliberate stylistic departure for Redding.
I'm sitting on the dock of the bay.
He was consciously moving away from the raw, energetic soul that had defined his earlier work towards something more introspective. The song was recorded just days before his death in a plane crash on December the 10th of 1967, making it impossible to know how his artistic evolution would have continued. The posthumous release of Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay in January of 1968 became Redding's only #1 single and the first posthumous single to top the charts in U.S. history. Steve Cropper, Redding's guitarist and co-writer, completed the production after Redding's death, adding the sound of seagulls and waves to fulfill Redding's vision. The song's crossover appeal helped break down racial barriers in music programming, reaching audiences that had previously been segregated by format. Redding never knew the impact his final recording would have. It won multiple Grammy Awards and has been covered by countless artists across various genres. The whistling at the end of the track, now iconic, was reportedly intended as a placeholder for lyrics Redding planned to write, but never had the chance to complete. A little-known fact about the recording is that the song came to Redding while he was staying on a houseboat in Sausalito, California, after performing at the Monterey Pop Festival. The festival had been a pivotal moment in his career, introducing him to a predominantly white rock audience who were mesmerized by his electrifying performance. During his stay in Sausalito, Redding watched ships come and go in the bay, inspiring the song's imagery. The famous whistling finale wasn't planned. Redding was simply filling space with the intention of adding more lyrics later. After his death, producer Steve Cropper decided to leave the whistling intact, creating one of the most recognizable endings in popular music history, preserved exactly as Redding had improvised it. People Got to Be Free by the Rascals emerged from one of America's most turbulent periods. The band formed in 1965 in Garfield, New Jersey, first calling themselves the Young Rascals. They shortened it to the Rascals by 1968. They'd already achieved success with hits like Good Lovin' and Groovin' before releasing People Got to Be Free. What sets this song apart is its direct response to tragedy. Felix Cavallari and Eddie Brigati wrote it following the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy in 1968. Unlike many protest songs of the era that were oblique or poetic in their messaging, People Got to Be Free was refreshingly direct in its call for freedom and equality. The band took their commitment beyond lyrics, refusing to play venues that wouldn't book a black act as their opening performer, a stance that cost them significant income in still segregated parts of America. After their commercial peak, the Rascals broke up in 1972, following creative differences and declining record sales. Various reunions have occurred over the years, with the most significant being the Rascals' Once Upon a Dream in 2012, a combination concert theatrical event produced by Stephen Van Zandt and his wife Maureen. Eddie Brigati eventually left music to work in musical theater, while Felix Cavallari continued performing as Felix Cavallari's Rascals. Their influence extends beyond their hits. They were one of the first successful blue-eyed soul groups, helping bridge racial divides in American popular music during a fractured time. What's particularly noteworthy about People Got to Be Free is how it combined an upbeat, catchy melody with a serious message about civil rights, making social commentary accessible to mainstream audiences. The recording of People Got to Be Free featured an unusual approach for the time. The Rascals incorporated elements of jazz, gospel, and Latin music into their soul rock foundation, using a horn section and complex vocal arrangements that set them apart from many contemporaries. While recording the song, the band was adamant about maintaining creative control, pushing back against their record label's suggestions to tone down the political message. The insistence on artistic integrity was still relatively uncommon in 1968, especially for a band with commercial aspirations. The song topped the charts for 5 weeks during the summer of 1968, providing an optimistic soundtrack during one of the most divisive periods in American history, proving that messages of unity could resonate widely even in troubled times. These songs define an era when music wasn't just entertainment, it was revolution. Share your memories in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into music history, and keep those records spinning. The soundtrack of our lives deserves to be remembered.